eligibility for the COVID-19 vaccine expands in Georgia. It now includes those over the age of 55, those with serious health conditions, those who are overweight and obese, and those over the age of 16 with high-risk conditions as defined by the CDC. To learn more about those conditions and whether or not you're eligible, you can go to the Georgia Department of Public Health's website. It's dph.georgia.gov. That's dph.georgia.gov. More vaccination sites are slated to open in Georgia this week. You can get registered for vaccination by going to myvaccinegeorgia.com. That's myvaccinegeorgia.com. A growing number of European nations are suspending their use of the AstraZeneca vaccine. France, Italy, Germany, and Spain are among those saying no to the pharmaceutical company's shot due to reports of blood clots associated with its use. Officials with AstraZeneca say there have been a small number of blood clots, but there is no evidence that the vaccine carries an increased risk of clots. Atlanta City Council member Andrea Boone teams up with Humana, Walgreens, and Uber to provide COVID-19 vaccinations in District 10.
For months, myself, Pastor Gregory Sutton, and other members have worked very tirelessly to get the vaccination right here in our very own backyard. As you know, our zip code, area code 30331, 30318, have been some of the hardest hit by the COVID-19. But now we're on our way back to work, we're on our way back to school, we're on our way back to our family reunions, but we want to encourage our neighbors to come out and get vaccinated.
That's a wrap. We'll see you on the next edition of Stay at Home Connect.
Yeah, so to be a short-term renter, you can have your primary residence plus one additional property. That is the max that we will allow. Inside of your property, there's a 2 adult per bedroom maximum. So you can't have a 3-bedroom house and have 10 adults staying there. So those are some limitations to make sure that we, have some caps on how many short-term rentals can be in a community. And it's unlawful to violate the noise ordinance and the various rule violations that we have. You have a dedicated parking space for your tenant. And if they're found in other people's parking spaces, those could lead to violations and offenses that could be $500 fines. So there's also, you can't put up any signs saying, I have a short-term rental rent here in the neighborhood. And homeowners, you have to notify your adjacent neighbors that you are indeed having short-term rentals capacity in your place. So now the fun part starts, where we have to actually operationalize this department's office and to then set the rules. So September 1st gives us almost 6 months to get ready so that we can have an influx of people, registering their property.
Welcome to Stay at Home Connect. I'm Phyllis Jackson. The CDC releases guidelines for individuals who've received their COVID-19 vaccination. Let's first define fully vaccinated. The CDC says you're fully vaccinated 2 weeks after receiving the last required dose of vaccine. You may then visit with other fully vaccinated or low-risk people inside without masks or staying 6 feet apart. They can also refrain from quarantining and testing if they do not have symptoms of COVID-19 after contact with someone who has the virus. CDC officials say they want Americans to delay domestic and international traveling for now. The number of Georgia seniors getting vaccinated is growing. Officials with Georgia's Department of Public Health report that over 900,000 seniors have received at least one vaccine, placing the Peach State ahead of the national average for seniors. Some DeKalb County kids return to school for in-person learning under CDC guidelines. Officials with the district say parents are being given the option for their student to attend remotely or in person. The staggered reopening is set up in 3 phases. The return to class comes as Georgia made teachers eligible to receive COVID-19 vaccines. Officials with drug maker Merck say an experimental antiviral drug is showing promise against COVID in its Phase 2A study. That study is expected to be completed in May. Atlanta City Council member Andrea Boone joins with Walgreens, Uber, and Humana for a COVID-19 vaccination event at Jackson Memorial Baptist Church. We'll see you on the next episode of Stay at Home Connect.
So on Monday, City Council voted to create the Atlanta Beltline SSD. And I'm standing here where the completed West Side Trail ends and the yet to be finished South Side Trail is sitting waiting. And Monday's vote is going to unlock $100 million over the next 10 years that when we match that with a $100 million contribution from the philanthropic community will allow us to complete the South Side Trail, be able to connect the West Side Trail to the East Side Trail. We've got work that's yet to be done over in the northwest and northeast parts of Atlanta. And Monday's vote by council puts us well on our way to realizing the goal of having a completed 22-mile loop by 2030 that'll connect 45 neighborhoods, over a dozen Atlanta public schools, and will continue to bring about the unprecedented economic development that we've seen over the last 15 years. The Atlanta Beltline has a goal of creating 5,600 units of affordable housing right on the trail. I'm standing not far from a couple hundred units that we broke ground on a couple years ago, and Monday's vote will create new dollars that will allow us to invest all around the 22-mile loop to ensure that housing can remain affordable directly next to this incredible new amenity.
May 3rd. This is a regular scheduled meeting of the Atlanta City Council's City Utilities Committee meeting. I'm Howard Shook, and because of schedule conflicts affecting both the chair and vice chair, I was asked to pinch hit today, which I'm happy to do. And so, Mr. Evans, let's find out who's with us today from the committee.
Yes, sir. I'll run through the roll of all the members. Councilmember Natalie Archibald, Councilmember Andrea L. Boone, Councilmember Dustin Hillis.
Here.
Councilmember J.P. Matzekite.
Here.
Councilmember Joyce Shepard.
Present.
Councilmember Howard Shook.
Aye.
Councilmember Cleta Winslow. Councilmember Shook, a quorum is present.
Yeah, barely. And because this has proven to be the most reliable remote meeting platform, hopefully we can get through today's not very long agenda. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and could you please read the remote meeting statement?
Yes, sir. This City Utilities Committee is being conducted remotely as advertised and in accordance with OCGA 5014-1. The meeting will be conducted in conformance with Robert's Rules of Order and the Rules of Council as authorized by City Code. The public may access the meeting by dialing 877-579-6743, conference ID 831-599-1256, which was noted on the Friday, March 19th public meeting notice. The public may also view the meeting on Channel 26, the Council's homepage at citycouncil.atlantagA.gov. the Council's YouTube channel, or the Council's Facebook and Twitter pages via @ATL Council. All presentations are available on the Atlanta City Council City Utilities Committee presentation page. The agenda was published and made available Friday, March 19th via atlantacitygA.iqm2.com. The public was able to submit comments via voicemail at 404-330-6057 between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. the day before this meeting. These comments will be played during the public comment portion of the meeting. All persons present on the remote council meeting conference bridge are requested to mute your phones and speakers. Additionally, speakers must be acknowledged by the presiding officer prior to speaking. Each council member is requested to open your Outlook email and minimize the screen. Amendments, substitutes, and informational documents have been distributed to committee members beforehand. Thank you all in advance for your cooperation.
Okay, thank you. And as regards the agenda, I'm going to make a motion to amend it by adding a brief update on our solid waste situation. This is at the request of the administration. Are there any questions or objections to that agenda as amended? If not, let's consider it adopted as amended by unanimous consent. It takes us to approval of the minutes that's been distributed. Are there any questions or objections to adopting or approving rather the minutes? If not, let's adopt them by unanimous consent. All right, Mr. Evan, what is our public comment roll call today?
I believe there are 4 messages for just a few moments.
Okay, well, please proceed with them when you're ready.
Thank you.
Robert Anthony Muhammad.
All right, Mr. Evan, what is our public comment roll call today?
No more.
Messages.
Oh, for spiritual beings and human experience. I speak to the...
Hello, this is Margaret Roach. I'm an owner in the Cross Creek condo complex, and I'm calling again about the solid waste fees that unfairly target multifamily and commercial properties. Cross Creek condo owners do not receive any solid waste service from the city, and we should not be paying a base rate for services that are not provided. Nor should we be paying for a frontage fee that charges us for services such as public street sweeping, removal of dead animals, mowing right-of-ways. These services aren't just for the small section of street that fronts our property, but for all public streets. The Public Works Department communications even describes them as common good services. My question for you is, when will the solid waste fee study be finished and reported? This study was commissioned in 2019 when it was clear that the Public Works Department could not explain their charges. It is now almost 2 years. Sadly, it begins to look like a delaying tactic because these solid waste fees can't really be explained. Neither this study nor the lawsuit should be an excuse for keeping these unfair fees. I hope you will direct the Finance Committee to develop next year's budget based on fair charges to all and not create a backdoor tax on just one segment of taxpayers. Thank you. And again, my name is Margaret Roach, and
Good morning. Good morning. This is Adrienne Coleman Tyler, and I'm calling to make comments about People TV. I'm concerned about People TV's operational readiness. In the February board meeting, People TV's general manager and operational managers said that the broadcast server wasn't working. They've also had issues in terms of paying the rent at the 19014 studios. I'm also concerned about the accessibility of People TV in terms of the station for community residents. I would encourage the Utilities Committee, if you would, to please ask People TV to present to you Number one, an audit of 2020 and an inventory, an equipment inventory to the City of Atlanta. They haven't published an audit or an inventory list in over 5 years. I would also ask that your consideration to host a work session for the committee to discuss the short-term operations of the public access channel, to really delve into whether or not the channel is meeting the scope of the contract that the city has entered into with People TV. I appreciate your time and your due diligence and purview over the public access channel. Thank you so much.
I am Brother Anthony Muhammad. I'm not a believer in religion. No more. I am a soulful spiritual being having a human experience. I speak to the Utility Committee because of the council conduct. The conduct of the council for the last year. I've been talking to you about a neighbor in this overstreet district that has a sewer that is literally coming out of the ground. Also is violating an ordinance of a free-flowing stream that this residue of the sewage from a septic tank goes into. I asked you to look into the violation of the ordinance and ask the law office. I asked Ms. Moore, but she did some investigation and continued to say that something is being looked upon. So what about the committee of Utility Committee? I've asked you members, and you treat me like I'm a one-of-race slave in 2021. They bring issues to this concern, and I always say the newer Caucasian members, if the members of a council that was here before you come would not act on this, don't you know you should? Look at the conditions of humanity among the different hues of the different races. We still have killing of Asian people, killing of dark carbonated people, by people that need transition. You members need to speak up today. You new members of council. Look at the 21st century. You have many Caucasians standing on behalf of Black Lives Matter. Now you have my Asian people crying. Got my brothers on the border, immigrants crying out. Speak up for truth. Be transparent. Be open and honest. This is Brother Anthony Muhammad. Speak and have some investigation about the sewer violating the free-flowing stream. I greet you. I make you at Hotel. Assalamu alaikum.
That concludes the public comment.
Thank you. So to Ms. Coleman-Tyler, upcoming is a presentation from People TV, which may answer some of your questions and address your concerns. We're also, as regards the caller asking and commenting about solid waste fees, as regular listeners to our committee meetings know, we ask about this constantly, and it's obvious that we're very impatient about it as well. And we'll be hearing from them a little bit later, and so perhaps more light's going to get shed on that. That takes us to the first of our 3 scheduled presentations and updates and reports. And are we ready to hear from People TV?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so very much for this opportunity to present our quarterly report to the Utilities Committee. I've also got my operational manager here, Michael McMahon, to help with any questions that might come up in his department.
Okay. Is there a slide deck or visuals that accompany this?
Say again?
Is there a slide deck or other visuals that accompany your report?
Yeah, I presented a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. So then, Mr. Evans, that's in our updated packet, I assume?
Yes, sir, and I'll go ahead and resend as she begins speaking so everyone can have it handy.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Please proceed.
All righty. People TV, Inc. is located at 190 14th Street, Northwest Atlanta, Georgia. The zip code is 30318. I'm Patricia Creighton, the general manager. I've been general manager since 2016. I was also the board president for a year. And before that, I was a long-time still producer of content on People TV. The mission of People TV, and I'm so honored to be in this position, and I'm upholding it to the highest of my possibilities, my expectations and possibilities. The mission of People TV, Inc. is to provide the Atlanta community a voice through public access media, residents' first priority. This is accomplished by providing citizens of Atlanta, Georgia, an equal opportunity to create public access programming. People TV offers basic technical training, access to equipment and facilities necessary to produce a non-commercial program for individuals, organizations, and institutions in the city of Atlanta at minimal cost. Slide shows the governance of People TV. We have Johnny Wilson, the president, mayor appointed. Calvin Hill is our treasurer. He was appointed by the board. Della Brooks, secretary, board appointed. Valencia Goodman, Corey Tinsley, Stetson White, Ron Shakir, Olatuma Lubamba, all board appointed. And our newest member to the board of People TV is Carmel Carlos. He's also was board appointed at our last meeting. Now, our support and revenue, as of Monday, our bank balance was $1,424.29. We got a payment from the city of Atlanta to pay 3 months back rent on the 12th of February in the sum of $24,009. The new season, we started a new season March the 1st, and we've accepted so far approximately 23 applications at $150 per show. That brought in $3,450. Studio rental and office rental, just the studio rental rather. We had an opportunity to host Young Thug Friday, and that brought in another $1,000. Our expenses, the rent at $8,798 a month plus 2 months back increase of $900. That made a total of $996. The total for that we owe CELIC as to date is $9,794. Staffing, we had 4 payrolls since our last quarterly meeting. Total of that was $10,344.16. The utilities, Comcast, Dish, and Georgia Power total in utilities was $2,507. Wait a minute. I got that wrong. The one needs to go. $2,570.10. Now, I want to say that People TV, since the coronavirus, People TV channel applications to broadcast had declined tremendously. We now do have 5 live broadcasts weekly. We was 3 in the last quarterly report, so we picked up 2 new live broadcasts. We had a shoot, like I said, with Young Thug on Friday, and was a great opportunity and hopeful a regular venue that he'll be looking into to have it here in People TV. People TV has upheld the obligations of the franchise agreement, and the city of Atlanta paid with no complaints from the city. Now, our technology and infrastructure, since our last quarterly report, we are still with the situation of we terminated the Telview service agreement, and the vendor that supports People TV programming server and management system as a reconstruction of financial priorities. The technology was outdated anyway, being years behind in software upgrades, and People TV Inc. operated without technical assistance when the server malfunctions occurred. It was the fact that our operational manager, Michael McMahon, was able to resolve situations and keep People TV on the air. Since then, he has been manually ingesting programming into the server until we are able to purchase a new server and continue to bypass an added cost. We have not missed a beat since the server has been down, unless we had an electrical power surge when everything blacked out, and those occur on a regular. Now, with the education we have our next free orientation coming up, going to be held on Wednesday, March the 24th. That's tomorrow. We have registered 8 people. Since yesterday, I've actually had 3 more people call to register, so we've got a total of 11 people, and that's our tops. We only allowing 10 people in the building, so I know one of them probably won't show up. Then the studio class will start the following Wednesday on the 31st, and if all 10 people sign up, that's $150 per person. That'll bring in another $1,500. Now, my manager's summary: People TV, Inc. has not received a payment from the City of Atlanta since July of 2020. We received a check for $155,100, the balance after the rent was paid to Seelig on March the 19th, 2021. After numerous inquiries since February the 12th, check was received for rent. I was told that the check would be mailed on Monday, March the 15th. The mail was delivered after 3 p.m. and the bank on the 19th of March, and the bank was closed by the time I got there to put the check into the deposit box. I mentioned this because on February the 10th, I was told as soon as possible, create an invoice to indicate the total back rental payments and include the purchase order number provided to me on Monday, February the 8th. I was told to please send an invoice to AP mailbox at atlantanga.gov, and don't forget to copy Ms. Harris on it. Ms. Harris said because the public access cable channel operational agreement had been issued a purchase order which would allow the release of funds for the back rent only to the landlord Seelig Enterprises, not a payment to People TV, which hadn't had a payment since July of 2020. 2 days later, I was handed a check in my hand for $24,900 to pay Seelig. That's Friday, February the 12th, for the 3 months back rent. My question is, why did it take another 30 days for People TV to receive our payment? The contract had been signed. We had done everything, due diligence, containing the station. This caused People TV to incur 2 non-sufficient fees, also a strain on the staff because of uncertainty of our future. We had a return payment that didn't get paid of our federal taxes, which makes us look bad. So those are my questions. I was also told to set up an ACH account, but I wasn't given the information to whom I'm supposed to set it up with. I am truly pleased that People TV is operating under an agreement. This is extremely important when contracting professional services for revenue. I would also like to ask, when can People TV expect a copy of the agreement that was approved so the board can have approval? That's the end of my report. I'm just, like I said, and the last thing I'm trying to get an understanding of how business is done at the city of Atlanta.
Okay.
I'm done.
All right, thank you, and understood. Now, I'm told that there is someone from the administration who hopefully can answer these questions. Who's with us from the administration?
We have Lenise Harris is on the line. We'll try to unmute her so she can speak.
Okay, great.
Hello. Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Councilmember Massakai. This is Lenise Harris with the Channel 26. I just wanted to clear a few things up, that the People TV contract was supposed to be finalized in July. And People TV had the right to seek counsel to have them look at the contract. The city was waiting for People TV's lawyer to get back with the Department of Procurement on the terms. They went back and forth until November. Then we were waiting on People TV up until December on their insurance. And once that was submitted, then we were able to move forward with the latter part of finalizing the contract. Department of Law also wanted to look more at the contract before releasing it and finalizing it. During that time, People TV made me aware of their back payment. I went through the proper channels to make sure that we could go ahead and initiate a PO for the contract. And with that, we were able to advance them the back pay for their rent. But the contract still was not final. It was going through internal signatures. So that is why they were waiting. And as we all know in this remote atmosphere, you have to track down those internal signatures and make sure it didn't, get held up anywhere. So once the internal signatures went through, we were able to finalize that. PO was initiated for $155,100, and the check was mailed on March 15th. But I am also showing that the check has not cleared. So I just want to make sure that from what Ms. Creighton is saying, she's received it, just hasn't gone to the bank with it. So they received it. So I did everything on my side to make sure that the process was still moving, and when it stalled, keep that going. And that is the reason for the holdup with the check. And I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, so you're saying we're one bank transaction away from finalizing this?
No, the contract is now final. She has the check. She just hasn't checked it. She hasn't cashed it.
Okay, so the contract is finalized.
Yeah, it was finalized early March. And so just to be clear, we gave an advance of the back rental for $24,900 because of the issue with their landlord. We did not want them to get evicted. So we advanced that from the contract, which is normally $180,000.
All right. Ms. Creighton, did you have any follow-up?
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, while we were in negotiation with the contract, it said to sign it and turn it back in 5 days. There were too many channels, too many things that had to be accumulated. It was virtually impossible to have that signed and back to them in 5 days, or we would have been signing a blank check, a blank whatever, to the city of Atlanta. So that's why they had lawyers. I turned to a lawyer. I was advised to get a lawyer by the board. So that's why
I didn't say there was a problem with you turning to a lawyer. I was just explaining to counsel that we did not hear back from your lawyer until November. We were trying to finalize the contract back in June of 2020. So we did not get the terms from your lawyer, your team, until November. And then we were waiting on the insurance back in December. Then our Department of Law wanted to make sure that everything was finalized with the contract. They did a little bit more research just to cross all the cross the T's and the I's, and then we were able to go through finalizing the back end of that contract. We had to go through internal signatures. That was done like the last week of February. And then once that was finalized, you were able to get paid out on March 15th. You weren't going to get paid out on the contract until all those internal signatures were done.
But Ms. Harris, we had been getting paid without a contract since 2013.
And you were getting paid incorrectly, and that's why we were trying to go the right route.
But we still...
that was incorrect. What was done in the past was incorrect. We are trying to move in a different fashion and to make sure that vendors are properly going through the channels and through the contract. And yes, ACH is part of you getting a payment. And I asked you to also reach out to the Department of Procurement for more information. If you had any questions, to call me.
No, you did not. Listen, Ms. Harris, I'm not going to bicker back and forth about what's going down. Only thing the emphasis I want to put on is the fact that we put our services out. We service the channel since July without a payment. That's the main thing I want you to...
I just explained why you didn't have a payment.
Right.
And I'm explaining that.
Yeah,
for somebody 9 months without getting paid.
Okay. I'm gonna jump in here and ask committee colleagues if they have questions. I'm not seeing anyone in the queue. do any members of the committee have questions? Because I don't see us in a productive way having additional discussions of this nature, in this setting. But that's just my opinion.
I agree with
I second that. Matt's a kite.
I agree.
Okay. We're going to move on to our next report. However, this is an important topic for us. We've had our noses to the grindstone along with everybody else, trying to keep things moving in the right direction.
Correct.
It sounds like we're close. Maybe we're across the finish line, and maybe what we're doing now is arguing about past practices. But I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. So without objection, let's move on to the Office of Resilience.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. This is, I also have a presentation I believe should come up shortly.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Good morning, council members. Thank you for inviting me to join today to provide an update on Clean Energy Atlanta. My name is Shelby Bousseau, and I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer in the One Atlanta Office of Resilience. I'll give it a moment. I don't see the slides coming up, so I'll just pause for a moment while they come up, unless correct me if you're seeing them.
Yeah, I think, well, I hope that members have accessed them through another device.
There you go.
We have been
Perfect.
sent it. Okay, thanks.
All right. Great. So as I said, Shelby Bousseau, Chief Sustainability Officer. We'll move on to the next slide. So as a quick reminder, our office is focused on delivering on the One Atlanta mission via sustainability initiatives across the city. Our work can be divided a myriad of different ways, but one way to look at it is dividing our focus areas into food and climate. And while these are certainly inextricably linked, our objectives for food are primarily related to the mayor's goal of ensuring 85% of Atlantans have access to fresh food within a half mile of their home. And our climate objective is to put Atlanta on a pathway to meet the Paris Agreement and achieve 100% clean energy by 2035. As you can see here, our work really touches upon many departments, so we work collaboratively as much as possible. All right, slide 3. So today we are here to discuss the 100% clean energy goal. You can move on to the next slide. Well, if you recall, in May 2017, City Council unanimously passed Resolution 17R3510, which directed our office to develop a plan to transition 100% clean energy, both within the city's operations and then also in the community by 2035. Okay, next slide. At that time, we defined clean energy as, quote, energy efficiency, wind, solar, existing, and low-impact hydroelectric, geothermal, biogas, and wave technology sources. The next slide. After a robust planning process, you can keep going one more after that as well. In March of 2019, Council formally adopted the Clean Energy Atlanta Plan, and this plan, if anyone would like to peruse it, can be found on our newly updated website, which is 100atl.com. That's the cover. All right, next slide. The planning process included rigorous engagement with many stakeholders across the city. Our team utilized surveys, community conversations, and of course experts to inform the plan development. Our data showed almost 90% support across the city for these initiatives and these goals. Next slide, slide 7. should come as no surprise that Clean Energy Atlanta places equity considerations to clean energy. Atlanta consistently ranks in the top cities for energy burden, which is defined as spending more than 6% of a household's income on electricity costs. Therefore, our top three priorities are to focus on energy equity, invest in energy efficiency, and when possible, prioritize local investments in renewables over those outside of the metro Atlanta area. Next slide. At the highest level, the plan outlines an approach to achieving clean energy that first, reduces use of energy overall, second, generates more clean energy, and third, buys renewable energy offsets. At the time of the plan development, Atlanta's energy use was about 8.1 megawatts per hour of electricity annually and was expected to go up about 10 or 11% by 2035. That is about the equivalent in CO2 emissions of adding over 100,000 cars to our city roadways. Additionally, the city operations itself account for about 7% of Atlanta's overall energy use. And while we're doing everything we can to optimize our own footprint, that really means that there's an additional need to look externally to achieve this ambitious goal as well. All right, move on to slide 9. The Clean Energy Plan outlines a few policies, programs, and projects that could help Atlanta reach the 100% goal by 2035. These policies were evaluated by their overall equity, economic development impact, and cost effectiveness. Slide 10. Of course, we know these measures evolve, so the plan is set to be reevaluated every 3 years. That means we'll be updating the plan this year with the support of our Clean Energy Advisory Board. All right, slide 11. Now we'll look back onto the 2019 through 21 highlights. Slide 12. As I mentioned, we just launched our Clean Energy Atlanta Advisory Board. Our kickoff meeting was held on March 18th. This board is co-led with community representatives. In fact, my co-chair is Chandra Farley from Partnership for Southern Equity. And we have various experts on the board that can speak to diverse voices impacted by our equitable transition to clean energy. Next slide. In 2019, Atlanta was selected to implement climate solutions to help grow the economy, protect public health, and upgrade the city infrastructure via the American Cities Climate Challenge. This work has been critical to advance our interdepartmental work that integrates climate impact metrics throughout the city. Our focus in the challenge work has been on the built environment and transportation. And while the program was initially set up to be 2 years, it has been extended through June of this year, 2021. Next slide. We know that 100% clean energy is not possible without true utility engagement work. To that end, in May 2019, the City of Atlanta submitted comments to the Georgia Public Service Commission, the PSC, regarding Georgia Power's 2019 Integrated Resources Plan, or the IRP. We advocated for expanded access to residential energy efficiency and renewable energy programs, continued and improved access to utility data to improve energy efficiency efforts, and increased access to renewable energy across the board. After hearing this request, along with the same from many other customers, the PSC required Georgia Power to increase its amount of solar energy procurement over the next 5 years. Next slide. The City of Atlanta also formally intervened in the Georgia Power 2019 rate case for the first time ever. We advocated against the proposed rate increases that were ultimately adopted by the Commission and Georgia Power. However, our office still actively engages with the PSC and Georgia Power on the demand side management working group. Next slide. We also continue to work with Georgia Power on a specific working group addressing the energy burden, along with several community groups. Our office has developed a proposed framework to address the energy burden via increased access to existing programs and the exploration of weatherization opportunities as they become available. Next slide. Our office continues to work closely with Invest Atlanta to support the rollout of PACE financing, or Property Assessed Clean Energy, that will make funding available to constituents for energy efficiency, on-site renewables, and water efficiency improvements. Next slide. One program I've been particularly excited about is our Solar Atlanta program that centers around our Solar Energy Procurement Agreement, or SEPA, as we call it, with Cherry Street Energy that began in 2017. Currently, 14 municipal facilities are solarized, and our production to date has been impressive. This program allows for the city to lead by example by installing as much renewable energy on our own facilities as possible with little to no cost out of pocket for the city. We expect this program to expand significantly as more opportunities arise. Next slide. Also on the solar front, the city has supported the externally led Solarize Atlanta campaign in the past, and another round is launching this spring. We are currently working alongside several local partners to ensure that rooftop solar is accessible to LMI households this time around as well. Next slide. One of our shining lights in the city of Atlanta is our success in the Atlanta Better Buildings Challenge that ran from 2011 to 2020. The goal was to reduce energy and water use 20% by 2020, and we reached the goal with an impressive 450 plus buildings a year ahead of schedule. In total, the program offset about enough energy to power nearly 150,000 homes for a year, and enough water to supply the city for 30 days. Next slide. Our office continues to support the implementation of our Commercial Buildings Energy Efficiency Ordinance, which requires buildings over 25,000 square feet to report their energy and water use annually and conduct periodic energy and water audits to identify savings opportunities. Currently, we are gathering data on over 2,000 facilities every year. Next slide. The city of Atlanta itself also has more than 35 facilities under our Guaranteed Energy Savings Performance Contract, which identifies energy savings measures to save the city an expected $9.9 million annually upon completion. Next slide. In 2017, we also updated the city's Sustainable Building Ordinance that requires all new municipal buildings over 5,000 square feet to certify LEED Silver, and existing municipal buildings over 25,000 square feet to certify under LEED's operation and maintenance system. Next slide. Clean Energy Atlanta also includes recommendations to strengthen the city's commitment to an electric vehicle fleet. We currently have more than 50 deployed and have passed one of the most comprehensive electric vehicle readiness policies in the U.S. Next slide. In sum, Clean Energy Atlanta has laid the groundwork for significant work across the city of Atlanta, from solar, energy efficiency, energy equity, and engagement to, next slide continues, creative financing strategies and collaboration. However, we still look forward to continuing this work via deeper research on initiatives such as true decarbonization, greenhouse gas emissions reporting, and further exploration of creative renewable procurement strategies. So I will stop there for now, and thank you all for having me today. Let me know if there are any questions.
Okay. I've got my eye on the speaker queue. If you have any questions, go ahead and indicate that you do. In the meantime, I've got a couple questions. So in terms of legislation to kind of fulfill your agenda, what's going to be next coming to council?
I think after we do a little bit more research on the decarbonization roadmap, that will start to identify some policies that could really start setting carbon goals that would align with our clean energy goals. So while we're talking about electricity in the clean energy plan, I think via this update, we need to make sure we're making a clear connection to carbon, and I would expect to bring that before council for conversation when we start putting numbers behind the carbon goals for the city of Atlanta.
All right. Let me ask you this, and you may not know the answer, but it suddenly occurred to me that, you know, we spent last summer under a pandemic, and so presumably there was a lot less travel, a lot less commuting. Do you happen to know how we compared last summer in terms of unhealthy air alert days to prior years?
I don't know off the top of my head, and I can definitely find out for you and get back to you on the number of days. But the American Cities Climate Challenge work has really been exciting to work collaboratively with ATL, DOT, and get a little bit more insight about those overlays of climate metrics in the transportation sector. And I'm really excited to keep that conversation going with them so we can make, start gathering the same data and be able to incorporate more of that into some of the carbon goals that I mentioned earlier too. And I think the health components are a really important facet of that as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Metzkite.
Thank you, Councilmember Shook, and thank you for this presentation. I was on the City Utilities Committee when we passed the legislation in 2019 and support that. I'm wondering if you could develop a scorecard or some kind of way to keep us easily updated on how you're tracking to that 100% clean energy, or maybe you have a scorecard. Is there anything like that exists?
We have a dashboard for the American Cities Climate Challenge work, but that's only limited to the programs that are tied to that. So I think it's a great idea and something we can certainly work on in our office to have just some regular reports in a template to share.
Yeah, it would be great if you could put something together that really focuses on the legislation that was approved and signed off on and where we are tracking toward those goals. So next question is around, I thought you mentioned something about carbon offset and purchasing credits. Did I hear that correctly? What you're thinking there?
So what I mentioned in relation to the plan was specifically an offset for our electricity, which can be translated into carbon offsets, you're right, but we haven't reached that point yet. And what we have been looking at more is off-site solar procurement at this point, but something we need to do a little bit more diving into. Yeah,
and it was, if I recall, really the committee, when we approved this in 2019, that there was a lot of energy around making sure that Atlanta had buildings that were, powered by renewable energy, and that we did everything that we could to offset our carbon footprint, and that, frankly, would have a positive financial impact. But we were not at all supportive of spending money to feel good that we are offsetting our carbon footprint, but rather we wanted to work to be sure that we put in measures in place that would do that. So just wanted to give you that. That was definitely the thinking of the committee at that time, and I would suggest that that's where y'all focus your energy, is really on implementing solutions that are going to be two things. One would be to be better for the environment, green in that sense, and two, better for the city financially and green in that sense as well. So that's all my comments. Thank you, Councilmember Shook.
And absolutely. I think that is why we are, the procurement strategies are the third tier of the prioritization. So I appreciate that context. So thanks for the reminder, and we'll take that into account.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to echo Mr. Matsukite. We agreed then, and I'm quite sure we continue to agree that we need to do what we can to be better stewards of the environment, and, protect the environment and strengthen the environment. But we also made it clear that because we do have so many cost burden citizens, that we just couldn't afford it to do so at if price was no object. So, but you understand that, and I'm sure you're going to do your best to balance those needs. Is there anyone else who has a comment or a question? I am not seeing anyone queued up. So, all right, Officer Resilience, thank you.
Thank you.
And now, Mr. Evans, that takes us to our first read, so then could you do the honors?
Yes, sir. Just for my information, do you want to get the Department of Public Works update now or after voting?
Oh, yes. No, thank you. We did amend the agenda to get what I'll call a brief update on solid waste in that situation. So if there is anyone here and they're ready to go, let's hear from them.
I'm told we have Mr. Robinson on the line.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning, council members. Chief Robinson, Interim Deputy Director for DPW. I wanted to provide a quick update since we promised we would update CUC frequently as it relates to the alternating weeks. Kind of give you an idea where we are on our attendance right now. Since Monday of last week until yesterday, the average attendance rate for solid waste collections was 67%. The numbers were steady during this time period for the most part in the 66, 67, and 68 range, although these numbers are up from the 60% when we first made modifications to the plan. It's still not close to the required minimum of 75% at a minimum on a consistent basis to return. Just to give you an idea of how difficult it is to kind of manage during COVID-19, the numbers as we were doing right now, I just looked at the daily numbers as well, too. So today's numbers is 64%, just to give you a line of sight into where we are. Now, in terms of what the department is also doing, last week we held a DPW town hall to discuss COVID-19. We had a guest speaker, Dr. Keisha Redmond from Kaiser Permanente of Georgia, and she provided a wealth of information regarding the COVID-19 vaccine and the importance of preventative measures. We also included a link to the recording for this town hall in our weekly communications with City Council. This was also provided to our employees who were unable to attend. I thought it was a really great town hall. I think the doctor was able to communicate effectively, especially to the staff that we have at DPW. I learned quite a bit as well as it relates to, molecular biology and quite a few other things. Also, to give you a quick update on our communications plan, we do have a 10-day contract in place. We're expected to deliver approximately 100,000 door hangers throughout the city. The first day was Friday, March 19th, and we believe that this plan will end Friday, March 26th. And we're also working with suite officers and ATL 311 to help deliver door hangers to areas of need determined by ATL 311 calls. The call center has been given the door hangers to mail out to customers as well.
Somebody needs to mute.
And the service change is also placed in the most recent water bill. In addition to this, since we're moving to more data-driven organization, we're beginning the initial stages of kind of evaluating our metrics so we can kind of see the effectiveness of our communication campaigns. Although this is very preliminary, I just want to give you a highlight into the direction that we're going. So that's kind of the real 30,000-foot view I wanted to provide council this morning, where we are right now.
Okay. And I see we've been joined by Ms. Andrea Boone. So good morning to you. Before I get to the couple of speakers I see lined up, I just have one quick question. Where do those employees stand in terms of access to vaccinations?
That's a good question. And that's something I can probably shoot you a note and follow up with you on that so I can get a clear number on that.
Okay. And Mr. Matsukite, I see you lined up. Was that from your previous comment or this issue? go to Ms. Shepherd.
Thank you, Chairman Shook. I want to say thank you to the Public Works Department. I was elated, to be honest with you, last week. I'm here working and my doorbell rings, and someone, one of the people who are actually giving out the door hangers, actually knocked at my door. Apparently somebody told me to knock at my door. Not only did they have a door hanger for me, but they also gave me a whole nother bunch of door hangers to give out to my constituents. And I asked them, I said, so you all are doing this? They said, yes, we're going through certain districts that are having a major issue or focusing on certain districts. And so I literally watched them go up and down my street. And then in other parts of my neighborhood, I heard people talk about it. I want to give kudos to y'all for doing that. That was a task, and y'all did it door to door, and I'm very proud of y'all for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Matsukai, did you have a question or comment?
No, that was left over from previous speaker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else with a question or comment regarding this update? So it sounds like, you know, the answer as to when the normal schedule resumes is still to be determined. It looks as though things are trending in a positive direction, but clearly we don't seem to be anywhere near the 75% threshold. Is that summing up?
That is correct.
Right. Okay. Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I can't get logged in. I was told Damon was working on that and would give me a call, but I've not heard anything. So
okay.
If I can get some help in trying to get logged in. But on this DPW, so really, we've been told all along this is COVID related, and I can understand if people are out, it hurts us, but to me it's just as much relates to how our staffing in public works, because if you start out with 75% staff and COVID hits, and then you're hurt. But if you started with 100, we could still be kind of chugging along. So what specific measures is DPW and administration taking to backfill all these positions that we are short, regardless of COVID or not?
No, great question. Obviously, we're in the process of hiring. Today, we have approximately, I've got that number here. We have approximately 13 offers out right now, and they're hiring about 15. We've got 15 scheduled interviews today. Then we have another hiring scheduled for the 31st.
So I can get a sense of that, how many openings do we currently have?
In terms of openings, I don't have the specific position report in front of me right now. Okay. But I can ask. I'll get that information to you as well too.
Okay, thank you, and I believe that's all I have for right now.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Shepherd.
I'm sorry, I didn't turn off my speaker. I apologize.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yeah, I have a question. Since the last couple of weeks have gone by, is the department aware of any emerging science or data suggesting that perhaps exposure or proximity to COVID-infected garbage, might be one of the causes here?
We have not seen any of that data or information as of yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I am not seeing any more speakers in the queue. So if there's no objections, let's move on to the agenda and our consent agenda. Mr. Evans, can you sound our first reads?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Item number 1, 21-00188. An ordinance by City Utilities Committee to amend Ordinance 19-01645, adopted by the Atlanta City Council on November 18th, 2019, and approved by operation of law of her city charter, Section 2-403, on November 27, 2019, authorizing the mayor or her designee to extend the term of the FC 9240 with Sawatech Services, Inc. to include the correct dates of the extended contract term on a month-to-month basis effective February 7, 2020 through February 6, 2021, and for other purposes. Item number 2, 21-00189, an ordinance by City Utilities Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee to execute an interjurisdictional agreement with the City of Hapeville on behalf of the Department of Watershed Management to continue the supply of water service to the City of Hapeville, Georgia for a term of 30 years effective January 1, 2021 through December 31st, 2051 with 2 10-year renewal option periods and for other purposes. Item number 3, 21-00196, an ordinance by City Utilities Committee to amend Section 130-82 of the Atlanta Code of Ordinances relating to fees for the provision of recycling services for each single-family residence and for each unit of a duplex, triplex, and quadruplex residence and for other purposes.
All right, thank you. With that objection, those will return to us at the next committee meeting. It takes us to our regular agenda, our voting items. Before we move on, let's do a check just to ascertain who's with us online and who's going to need to be voice voted. Mr. Evans.
Councilmember Archibong. Councilmember Andrea L. Boone.
Present.
Will you be voice voting, ma'am?
Yes, voice voting.
Thank you. Councilmember Dustin Hillis.
Present and still not into the e-board room, so I'll be voice voting.
Thank you. Councilmember J.P. Matzekite.
Present and logged in. Thank you. I'll electronically vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Joyce Shepard.
Present and logged in.
Councilmember Shook, are you logged in?
I am, thank you.
Councilmember Cleta Winslow.
VOU.
Okay, Councilmember Shook, quorum is present. We've been joined by Councilmember Boone, and 2 members are voice voting, 3 are logged into the system.
Okay,
and I'm here. This is Archibong. Thank you.
And are you voice voting or are you online? Ms. Archibong, are you online or voice voting?
I believe she's indicated she'll voice vote.
No, I'm online.
Oh, excuse me. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then, I'm sorry, did we hear from Ms. Winslow? Was she with us?
She didn't respond to roll call.
Okay. So, Ms. Boone and Mr. Hillis are our voice voters moving forward, correct?
Yes, sir.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And with that, Mr. Evans, if you'll sound the captions, that'd be great.
Item number 4, 20R4571. An amended resolution by the City Utilities Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee to execute agreements for RFP S 120031, contracts A through F, architectural, engineering, design, and construction management services. Contract A with Arcadis BPA joint venture, a joint venture of Arcadis US Inc. and Brinley Peters and Associates Inc. Contract B with Atlanta Water Partners joint venture, a joint venture of Jacobs Project Management Company and Engineering Design Technologies Inc. Contract C with CDM Smith Benchmark joint venture, a joint venture of CDM Smith Inc. and Benchmark Management LLC. Contract D with FWR joint venture, a joint venture of Fries and Nichols Inc., Wade Trim Inc., and Williams Russell and Johnson Inc. Contract E with H2R joint venture, a joint venture of Hazen and Sawyer PC and R2T Inc. and contract F with HDR, Rohit Fox Joint Venture, a joint venture of HDR Engineering, Inc. and Rohit Fox Construction Control Services Corporation to provide architectural, engineering, design, and construction management services to the Department of Watershed Management on a task order basis for an initial term of 3 years with 2 one-year renewal options, and to add funding to a joint task order fund in an amount not to exceed $5 million and 0 cents. Contracted work shall be charged to and paid from the project and account number listed herein and for other purposes. This item was referred back from full council on 3/15/21.
Thank you, and I see Mr. Hillis with a question.
Thank you, Councilmember Shook, and just for your information and the record, I am logged into the system now. I had to reset. But wanted to start off with a motion to amend. It's going to be the same amendment that I offered in full council, so we all know the reasons why. I won't belabor those again. But basically, this amendment strikes the language throughout, removes the first 2 proponents, Arcadis, BPA joint venture, and Atlanta Water Partners, number 2, Atlanta Water Partners joint venture, and replaces them with the next 2 qualified scoring proponents of BWL joint venture and Landmark Consulting and Infrastructure Solutions Group joint venture, which is Atkins and Corporate Environmental Risk Management. And if you haven't received them already, I believe Mr. Evans will resend these back out to everyone on the committee. So I'll make a motion to amend that.
All right, you've heard Mr. Hillis's motion to amend. Is there a second, or are there comments or questions pertaining to his motion? All right, while we await a second, and this is not an invitation. Well, here's Ms. Archibald. Ms. Archibald, go ahead. You may be muted.
Yes, if you can hear me, let me turn down this. Okay, so the amendment is before us. If it gets a second, I guess, or it really doesn't need a second, but have we heard from Martin Clark, the Chief Procurement Officer, yet?
No, not today.
I would like to have him talk to us about this whole paper, and I know the amendment is something that will be impacted by what Mr. Clark says. So I would like to ask that we hear from Mr. Clark as we consider how we want to approach this paper, be it to amend it or whatever other step we may want to take. So that would be my request, to have Mr. Martin Clark talk to us before we do any motions or take any actions on the paper.
Okay, thank you. Does the Procurement Commissioner happen to be on the line, Mr. Evans?
Yes, good morning, committee members. This is CPO Martin Clark. This amendment and the prospect of carving 2 vendors out is in contravention of our code, and it breaches the sanctity of the process by which proponents are awarded contracts, Councilman Shook. A competitive evaluation process which was reviewed, which had complex criteria on a complex A&E solicitation by trained and experienced evaluators, some of whom had over 30 years of experience, resulted in the user agency and DOP recommending 6 awardees. This amendment would seek to arbitrarily ignore all required criteria, all responsiveness checks, and all law to have this committee indiscriminately name alternate awardees at its own potential peril, as I'm certain that the firms that were removed would come after the city. There was no documented basis to remove these two firms. This is unprecedented that the committee would look to undo a procurement process that resulted in 6 awardees. We do not have the grounds to arbitrarily remove awardees without a procedural analysis or responsiveness. I do not know what the basis would be. In fact, I don't think there are bases. The two parties that were removed, the Department of Procurement did not receive any documented basis to abandon any of the awardees based on performance issues. The procurement process cannot rely on hearsay. Before we suspend, disbar, or disqualify a firm for defaults or performance issues, it has to be a documented process of notice, a cure period, and termination. Contractor performance reviews are provided by the user agency before renewals. The reviews contain both positive and negative feedback. What was not previously stated by the councilman were the positive elements stated for the firms, including excellent technical design support and technical resources, sound service, good communication, sound knowledge of the Department of Watershed's quality control facilities and combined sewer control facilities. There was nothing provided that showed any disqualification, debarment, or suspension. There was nothing that would allow me to disqualify the proponent. If there are performance issues, the user agencies would have contacted DOP and OCC, and we would send a cure notice. No cure notices were issued against these vendors. Consequently, I would ask that this committee move the original label forward, as, again, there is no basis to remove and replace these awardees, committee members.
Oh, okay, I still have the floor. So, Mr. Clark, you're reacting to the amendment, and procedurally, we usually get a motion and a second. It's not yet been seconded. I was asking for there to be a discussion or you to give an overview of the procurement process leading up to the introduction of this paper for our consideration. And so can you give us sort of a timeline? And we have the iPro, and there were a number of findings that were responded to. So I just wanted you to walk through that so we can understand the basis, and then we can look at any amendments that are being proposed.
Sure, absolutely. This paper actually began, or this process began last March of 2020, when the search began. We did put out a procurement, and we received 13 bids, 3 of which were found non-responsive, and 10 bidders were considered. Of those 10 bidders, 6 firms were considered as awardees. There is or was an absolutely clear evaluation process that was performed by evaluators that had significant experience in the realm. Evaluator training was conducted with all evaluators. Responsiveness checks were completed, and non-responsive letters were sent out. Informational proposals were distributed to all the evaluators. Scoring sessions were held. Cost proposals were then distributed once we had scored informational proposals. Scoring session was held for the cost proposal utilizing a scoring matrix that the user agency provided. Scores were tallied to include OCC and risk scores, and the top 6 scoring proponents were sent to the Department of Watershed with a request for a recommendation memo for next steps. And I believe should the Department of Watershed want to negotiate terms, such terms would be forward. There were, at one point, rescission letters sent to 5 proponents who were originally found non-responsive, where the Department of Procurement is always looking to try to engage as much competition as possible. And here, where nearly half of the bidders had the same question wrong, the department, the chief procurement officer is able to waive and remove that question if it's clear that there may be some indication that either an instruction or some component about the question was not understood by so many proponents. And that happened in this case. And so we ended up having 10 proponents go through, and once again, Councilwoman Archibong, you have been presented with 6 potential awardees.
Okay, all right. And I've already spoken to Mr. Hillis, and thank you very much for that overview. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Hillis.
Thank you, Councilmember Shook. First, before I get to my questions, I'll just point out that from the response we received from the Chief Procurement Officer, it sounds like he wasn't tuned in for a full council meeting and would suggest that I'm just simply offering this up out of the blue is ridiculous. We went over multiple vendor performance issues with each of these vendors, including just a minor detail, a federal indictment of one of the company's vice presidents. But I first want to start my questions just generally about this procurement minus these 2 vendors. And these are for Mr. Clark. Does procurement provide the evaluation committee with performance evaluations for existing vendors, and why or why not?
Performance, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sure. Contractor performance evaluations are performed by the user agency and are usually provided prior to renewals. On the evaluation team, you will have experienced user agency personnel who would know the work and experience of the firms that are done, that are being asked to be considered for award. So they do have access to that. And more importantly, and again, I have to stress this, Councilman Hillis, you've mentioned some of the negative things, but you have to also consider that the contractor performance forms also include positive things, which I don't think were mentioned by you. And I did actually listen to the whole meeting, and it's, I think, incredibly important for you to consider that there was nothing that was presented to the Department of Procurement that would disbar, disqualify, suspend any of the firms that you are asking to remove. Again, there were overall positive evaluations performed for those firms, sir.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question is, so this A&E contract is for Watershed. Multiple departments have A&E contracts. Other bids for similar services in other departments were canceled in 2020, but this one is here in front of us today. So what makes this procurement special, and why is it still in front of us when others were canceled?
Sure. The reason why this procurement is before you is because there was no basis to disqualify the procurement, sir. We had a robust number of bidders. We had a very robust evaluation, and the results of that evaluation were 6 great potential awardees for the city, who I should also add have expended an enormous amount of resources and time in putting this thing through. Certainly, as the Chief Procurement Officer, I take into consideration the fact that the public, that the bidders and the proponents, they go through a lot to try to submit these bids, and to summarily and arbitrarily remove them. Not only is it bad for business for the city of Atlanta, but it certainly sends a bad message to the community, and we want to have more bidders. I do not want to incentivize the community to not bid with us, sir.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Next question, well, just kind of a statement. As was pointed out during full council, this procurement started, one, under our previous watershed commissioner, who's now left the city, and it also started under your predecessor, who was accused of wrongdoing and is now no longer in his job. So that's an additional point of concern. Secondly, this procurement started back in March. I believe it was introduced to this committee in the fall of last year and just been sitting around for months. And I would say there's certainly a reason for that. What it particularly is, why the administration wanted to hold this for so long, I don't know. But certainly some of these issues may play into that. At least that's my opinion. So this was, as I mentioned, offered the beginning of March. It's my understanding that multiple proponents requested the due date be pushed back because of that, and procurement ignored those multiple requests. Can you fill me in as to why?
So I think it might be advantageous to go back and clarify. This procurement started in March and was presented, I believe, in November to be passed. However, we responded to an IPER report, which there was an investigation done for, I believe, a couple of months that resulted in no violation being found. So in terms of the reference to time, there is an explanation. The user agency and the Department of Procurement were absolutely, clear focused to make sure that any IPER finding was investigated, and we initiated that contact. With regards to the timing of this, again, we worked as efficiently as possible, and we wanted to have as much transparency, sir. Again, there was nothing within those findings that would allow the chief procurement officer to disqualify this this solicitation. Did that answer your question, sir?
No, my question is, why did procurement ignore multiple requests to push the procurement due date back when this RFP was issued literally at the beginning of a pandemic, which we're still in? You don't think the firms needed a little more time to go over this, given that City Hall closed just about a week or two after this RFP went out? I've been told that multiple vendors submitted hundreds of questions, and no one bothered to get back with them until the week before the procurement was due. So I guess that's two separate questions. One, why didn't we push back the procurement date, given this was at the beginning of a global pandemic? And two, because it something procurement prides itself upon, that they don't respond to questions until a week before a very large bid is due.
Gotcha. Councilman Hills, I will give or ask Commissioner Makita Browning to jump in, but I also want to make a very clear, observation. And that is this, is at the global pandemic, when there was an enormous amount of concern about the economics, I think it was absolutely critical that the city complete this solicitation because we were open for business and we certainly wanted to allow the business community the opportunity to contract with the city of Atlanta. I believe we even advertised this thing for 60 days to accommodate, that tumultuous time. But I'll defer to the commissioner to expand that response.
Well, before she responds, I'll just respond as well that this has been held in committee for over 4 months now. So, I mean, we have plenty of cushion time to have delayed this for, whether it be a few weeks or a few months at the front end. So.
Hey, good morning, Councilmember Hillis, and thanks, CPO Clark. I just add to, as far as the elongation of time that's taken, we did initiate this procurement in March of last year. I believe it was advertised for a total of 50 days. I did not receive any feedback that there was any concerns regarding the duration of the advertisement, and certainly I think the procurement team and department really tried to make this as seamless of a process despite, entering into the pandemic. And so, I think we put our best foot forward to try to push this very important solicitation forward and through the process. And to CPO Clark's point, a part of the delay was the further look and investigation that was conducted as a result of the IPR report, and that took a couple of months to complete. So that's what really kind of brings us to this point of why, really the delays and bringing it before the committee for a decision.
Thank you, Commissioner Browning. Additionally, it was brought to my attention that an item that usually happens for procurements, especially something this large, over $100 million, that only happens every 5 years, that procurement canceled and then refused to reschedule a supplier diversity training session. So if you were like a newer EBO, SBO vendor and you didn't really know how things worked in the city, this is the, training session, if you would, that you could attend and learn about how to do business with the city of Atlanta. So why was that canceled? And more importantly, why did procurement refuse to reschedule that very important training sessions for vendors who might have wanted to be a part of this?
Yeah, at the time of this solicitation, the outreach sessions were live via, I believe, Zoom. I guess the clear observation is that because we were going into a pandemic, live supplier classes were not a viable option, Councilman Hillis. But I believe that there were outreach sessions via Zoom, and the department has continued since then to hold all of our pre-bids, et cetera, even our openings virtually, so that there'd be a seamless continuity in service, sir.
So you said you believe they were held. I mean, were they held or not? Because, I remember the beginning of the pandemic, it took departments many, many months to get virtual meetings up and running. So can you confirm that those were held virtually?
Also, are you referring specifically, Councilman Hillis, to the EBO or MFBE meetings with primes, or are you specifically referencing supplier registration training?
From what I was told, there's just supplier diversity vendor training.
Okay, so then I would refer to Bruce Bell from OCC to respond to that. I don't. Again, with supplier outreach sessions. We did have them live via Zoom.
Is that person on the line?
Council members, Bruce Bell is not on the call.
Okay, well, we'll see if he can get on the call. If not, I'll just go ahead and move to my other questions and concerns related to the procurement. Another item that was brought to my attention is that an employee of procurement that at the time had a lawsuit against the city was what headed up this procurement. And while that person, probably an excellent person, I don't know her personally, but do you as the chief procurement officer feel that it is prudent to put someone who has a large lawsuit against the city heading up one of the largest procurements that the city does every 5 years?
Councilman Hillis, I will avoid speaking to HR issues directly, but needless to say, if there are any or was any question of an employee's ability to complete this solicitation, I would have made a change. And I'll leave it there. There was nothing within the activities of these solicitations that were breached or for any reason a basis for us to disqualify the members. We have an incredibly gifted staff at the DOP, and they did a great job with this solicitation. And again, I'm going to ask that this solicitation be approved.
This is Nina Hickman. May I be heard on the litigation portion of this?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I want to make it clear that whether the employee had litigation pending against the city or not, that would not have been a basis for not allowing her participation in the process. Additionally, in fact, it may have exacerbated any claim, and it could have resulted in a claim of retaliation had she not been able to participate or do her job. And so I wanted to make that clear. That litigation has been resolved. However, it would have put the city in an unfortunate position had she not been allowed to do what she was required to do under her job.
Thank you for that, Ms. Dixon. I'm going to finish up with the procurement. I've got one or two more questions. Then I have some questions for the ethics officer regarding that end of this. Speaking to individual performance, I've documented all of those comments or complaints rather. We all are probably all familiar with the MLK Junior Drive improvement project and what a drawn-out mess it has been. We're all very familiar with the Department of Public Works solid waste fee study that was done. Those are both involved Arcadis. Arcadis also conveniently decided not to disclose the federal indictment of their vice president as is required on the form, is my understanding. I guess my overarching question to our chief procurement officer is, given all this, the federal indictment of the vice president, other connections that person had with the city, all of these negative vendor complaints, an ethics investigation. Just one, how was procurement comfortable with moving this forward overall? And two, how does a firm that's involved in all of this, including this federal indictment, score the highest in this procurement?
Regarding the iPro, it's important to note, Councilman Hillis, that the department responded to each iPro item and explained our related procurement process. For example, they had a finding that a majority partner didn't submit a certificate of existence, and we explained that the city will accept valid business licenses in lieu. Regarding the question of litigation, in the identified instance, the indictment was against individual employees who no longer worked for the company at the time of the bid and not the offeror itself. Therefore, we considered the firm's bid. We referred to law, and the indictment was in the name of the individuals, not the company. And again, if we were to just arbitrarily remove that vendor from this process, we would potentially find ourselves in litigation. Again, there was no documentation to support their disqualification, debarment, or suspension. And in fact, there have been positive performance reviews that were provided by the user agency, and I will certainly invite the user agency to buttress that position. Again, there was nothing that the Department of Procurement was presented that would serve as a basis for the removal of these awardees, sir.
Thank you for that and all your answers. Moving on, mentioned that I was going to seek some more information out on, we've been told multiple times that there was I believe something brought up in the iPro or an ethics investigation related to, I believe, maybe a watershed employee that was involved in this procurement. Do we have ethics on the line? And if so, my question first will be, has this investigation concluded? Because I know if it hasn't, you can't even speak to it. But that's my first question for ethics if they're on the line.
They're not on the line right now. They've indicated they want to join. I'll make sure that they're on the correct conference bridge.
Okay. While we wait on them, I'll defer to my colleague for any more questions or comments.
Let's do this. And we've had extended discussion about this. And no, I did not immediately call for a second, precisely because I think the discussion we've had, needs to be had. I'm glad we had it. I think the public is better off for it, along with the vending community and council. And we can ask more questions and have more discussion, and hopefully the ethics officer will join us for this. At this time, though, I am going to ask for a second to the proposed Hillis amendment.
Second. No, wait a minute, to the Hillis amendment. No, well, second, Boone. Forget that. Second, Boone.
Okay.
Second, Boone.
Thank you. Second by Ms. Boone. And Mr. Hillis, are you back in the queue here?
No, I'll speak after the vote.
Okay, yeah, the vote's open.
And what's the amendment? Because I'm sorry, this is Councilman Winslow, so I got on the call a little late.
Councilmember Winslow, this is the same amendment that we went over and discussed at the council meeting on Monday, which removes the two vendors that we've been talking about, issues that have been brought up about them, and replaces them with two subsequent vendors that were left out of the number 6, but are qualified firms that were in the procurement.
Oh, okay. And I think I spoke on this before, but I'm just not comfortable with that because while I may not always agree with what the Office of Procurement is doing, I mean, there have been multiple
eyes and ratings that various individuals have done, and for us to replace it with some other people, and that, to me, that's getting into a large part of what the executive branch does. So I'm just uncomfortable with that. So I guess I'll vote against it. But thank you for the explanation.
And I will just add that both of those two subsequent vendors, there were no findings with those vendors on the IPRO report, is what we were informed of, I believe, last Monday.
Right. And it's not, it's not that. It's just that I'd rather see it go back and be rebid again, as opposed to us, picking and choosing, because I don't have the same information that you have, Councilmember Hill. So I'm just, this kind of thing is just a little scary for me. So I'm not saying that it's something that we can't do. I'm just saying that it's something that we haven't done before. And I just don't want to venture out into deep waters like that. It makes me uncomfortable.
All right, now, before we carry the vote, I want to make sure that other people were not cut off with questions or comments. And then plus, evidently, Ms. Sengova is on the line if we want to hear from her before carrying the vote. So I am showing on my screen that Mr. Hillis and Ms. Archibong have indicated a wish to be recognized. So, Mr. Hillis, is that correct?
Yes, just like I said before, I want to be recognized after the vote.
Okay, and Ms. Archibong?
What you're doing now is what I was going to recommend, to hear from the ethics officer, and then I wanted to make a comment about the appearance that this vote will take. So anyway, what I want to do is have her speak, and then I want to get in the lineup again.
Okay, if there's no objection, then let's bring on Ms. Sengova. I know Mr. Hillis has a question or questions for her.
Good morning. This is Jabu Sengova, ethics officer, and I believe I have Carlos Santiago joining in a minute. I think he was trying to get back on the line.
I guess my first question, I don't know if you can answer this or not, Ms. Sengova. Before we get into this, it is my understanding, and I guess others' understanding, that there was an ethics investigation opened into this, potentially regarding a watershed employee and their involvement in it. Has that investigation concluded?
Yes, our review is completed, Mr. Hillis.
And what were the findings of that? What were the details and findings of that investigation?
So our investigation, or rather review, was only limited to matters that would fall under the ethics code. So primarily, we were looking at any of the contacts, which is referenced, I believe, in the memorandum that we provide to the IPRO division, and that was just limited to any communications. So based on our thorough review, we found that none of the communications related to this current RFP before the committee today. Now, the only contacts we found were incidental to existing city projects. So there was nothing we found that would show any financial or personal interest or any potential conflict. So again, we also looked to see if there was any impropriety or appearance of impropriety, and we found nothing to that effect.
And when you say you looked at it, are you talking about the whole procurement, or was a particular matter within the procurement brought to your attention?
We only looked. Okay, go ahead. Yes, Mr. Santiago's there. I'll let him speak to that. It's just specifically what our division looked at.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Hillis. Carlos Santiago, Deputy Ethics Officer. Yes, so we we were asked specifically to review alleged contacts between prospective bidders and two employees within the Department of Watershed Management, which allegedly took place during the blackout period. IPRO had flagged several electronic communications involving two separate joint ventures. Both of these were JVs that were deemed non-responsive at the front end of the solicitation. What we did is we reviewed email records, spoke with procurement staff, conducted interviews with them, reviewed the bid packages, and through that we walked through the entire procurement process to make sure there were no either personal or financial interests involving any of our city employees that would require recusal or further disclosure. Based on that review, we did not find any communications that were related to this particular bid. The companies that we were looking at already had some existing contracts with the city, so some of these were related to task orders that were already in motion prior to the solicitation. So in conclusion, we took a look and we did not find any documentary or testimonial evidence to show a potential violation of the city's code of ethics by any of the city employees or bid proponents. Again, our review was limited to the code of ethics. So as far as identifying potential policy, our internal policies, our internal communications, our procurement policies, our report did not come to a conclusion on those. However, if to the extent that anything was identified, those would also have been referred to the IG as well, because they would fall under matters that would not be under our purview. For instance, if they involve the procurement code or department policies. So again, ours was limited to the referral from the IPRO division, and based on that review, we did not find any conflicts of interest involving our city employees or any of the prospective bidders. And again, those two bidders that we did look at in relation to the communications were deemed non-responsive early in the process.
Thank you for that. So I have a few questions. When was the blackout period?
I believe we're still in the blackout period until the end, until this is legislation is approved by council.
And when did it start?
That would have been at the point in time where the procurement was put out on the street. So the blackout period would have begun essentially once the usually we'll have a pretty big conference. I know those things did not occur because of the pandemic. However, at the point where the solicitation is out, really we're looking at our city employees. And officials should not be getting involved in that process if they have a personal or financial interest in any of the prospective vendors or prospective bidders.
Okay. And when you were explaining your investigation, I believe you stated you only looked at potential electronic communication. Were there any in-person meetings that your attention was called to between those two employees and any of the proponents?
We were first alerted to some email communications, and immediately, of course, we took a look at all the email records related to those communications, and we'd also then conducted interviews with various staff members, and also the employees, to get some context on what those communications were. They took place pretty far down the road, and I probably believe in the fall, after the awardees had already been determined. And again, what we determined was that those contacts were not related to this specific procurement. They were related to existing task orders, and in one case, an individual was simply copied on an email with one of the JVs that was deemed non-responsive. So it was not there really wasn't any reference to this project, and it also did not have at that point did not have any bearing on a bidder that would have been deemed responsive or potentially awarded.
Thank you. Last question. So when you conclude an investigation, would you say that ethics includes that one, this 100% didn't happen, or would you say that your conclusion is more of, this is inconclusive, to make a determination on?
Well, in this sense, instance, our review was limited to the request from the IPRO division. So our response to IPRO was in relation to the concerns they raised. We were looking primarily to see whether there are inappropriate contacts between employees and vendors during the blackout period. We reviewed and conducted interviews with members of the evaluation team, contract specialists, and we got a pretty thorough rundown of exactly the inside and out of the procurement. So when we replied to audit, we were replying in relation to the question they posed, which was whether those email communications raised an appearance of impropriety or violated the code of ethics. And based on our review and the context of those communications, it was our conclusion that they did not. What we did not do was come to a conclusion on whether there was any other internal policies or procedures that either could have been done better or which may have violated procurement policy. And in that situation, that's outside of our jurisdiction. However, those concerns, if they're present, we would, pursuant to the code, forward those to the IG for further review if necessary. And also, if we identified something that was potentially dispositive or if it would have been a violation of our code, we would have definitely reported that back to the IPO division for inclusion in their report.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Now, I believe, and we have not tallied the vote yet, but Ms. Archibong, I know, wanted to be recognized, and then if there's no objection, let's hear briefly from the mayor's office. So, Ms. Archibong. And Ms. Archibong, you may be.
I am. I'm sorry. I was eloquent, let me tell you. I want to thank the ethics department for responding, as well as Mr. Clark. I wanted to speak just specifically to the amendment that is before us. We heard from the law department during the last council meeting that to approve and adopt the Hillis Amendment would be an action beyond our legislative authority and will result in real potential for the loss of our legislative immunity. Said differently, we would be legally exposed in the event of a lawsuit filed relative to this amendment. That's a risk that I'm not willing to take. Frankly, I do not believe that it is a prudent course of action for this council to take a cavalier or to accept legal advice from our law department on a la carte basis. We recently took advice relative to an amendment I made on the proposed Beltline SSD. I wanted to carve out some Atlanta and DeKalb parcels, and we heard very clearly liability, can't do it, and I was unsuccessful in that amendment, and I understood that it was on advice of counsel and the decisions made by my colleagues. I respect that, but to now ignore advice, not only is it confusing, it is so ill-advised. I think the points that Councilmember Hillis is making deserve additional follow-up and may reflect guidance on how the city moves forward with future procurement. Improvements of our processes are a good thing. However, innovation and change are not a substitute for acting in a prudent and appropriate way within our responsibilities as legislators. I think Councilmember Winslow said it well. We have some things that we can't do as a legislator. We can say yay, she can say no. And I think that's about the end of our lane in the procurement space. I'm not a procurement expert, and I don't know if any of my colleagues are, but I know in this space and at this time, we are legislators. The precedent that is being set by this is beyond scary. It is frankly bordering on unethical. We don't want to be in that space. I think it is a well-intentioned position that Councilmember Hillis has taken. I think he's done some due diligence. And as it relates to that blackout period conversation, I've struggled with that. We are legislators. It comes into our space. We do hear from the public, and I think we want to hear from the public. And so I would like at some point for us to flush out what, in fact, is a blackout period as it relates to legislation that is in our queue. I think we're in a different space. We're not the department. The decision has already been made, and I think we can take information and it can inform whether or not we do yay or nay on the procurement. We don't supplant proponents. We don't, insert ourselves as a subject matter expert because guess what? We're not. And so my recommendation is that we take the information that we've received from Councilmember Hillis, and I commend and thank him for his due diligence and his hard work, but frankly, this is not our lane to do what is proposed in this amendment. So I strongly urge my colleagues to vote no on this amendment, and then let's take the main paper and vote our conscience on what we can do as legislators, which is yes, we're ready to move forward, or no, we're not. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. If there's no objections, let's hear briefly from Ms. Charlotta Wilson-Jacks, if she's on the line and unmute.
This is Ms. Jacks. Thank you, Councilmember Shook. This is Ms. Jacks. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I wanted to go back and correct the record in terms of a statement that was made regarding Mr. David Wilson, who previously served as the Chief Procurement Officer. And Mr. Wilson did not resign because of wrongdoing. He offered his resignation on his own accord. So I would hate for us to have that on the record where he was accused of wrongdoing. And so that is the statement that I wanted to correct on the record.
Thank you. Now, if there are no other comments, let's everyone go ahead and complete the vote and tally the vote. Ms. Boone, I guess you are still on voice voting. How do you vote?
Yes. I think
okay,
I was protected on that.
You work. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Councilmember Shook, I'm a voice voter as well. So mine is no.
Vote?
No.
Thank you. Okay, the motion fails. 2 ayes, 5 nays. Do we have an alternative motion?
I'm in line to be recognized.
I'm sorry, Ms. Ellis. I didn't know if that was a remnant from last time. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So just to be clear on the previous amendment, the reason for this amendment is because all of the issues I spoke to are very concerning. I'm not comfortable approving this, and I feel that at least some of my colleagues feel the same, but also know the importance of an A&E contract to whether it be watershed or DOT or DPW, and this was a way that I would be comfortable moving forward as long as those vendors were out, and we could still have 6. But the amendment didn't carry, so all I feel comfortable doing at this time is filing this, and I'll make a motion to file.
All right, there's been a motion to file. Is there a second on the motion to file? Ms. Boone, how do you... Ms. Boone, Mr. Winslow, any comments on your voice only?
No.
So is there a second to file the paper? Okay, hearing none, motion fails for lack of a second. Ms. Archibald, I'm sorry, were you in the speaker's queue?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
All right, is there another motion?
Shepherd.
Yeah, Ms. Shepherd makes a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Winslow, second.
Motion by Shepherd, second by Winslow. Questions or comments about the motion to approve? I am not. Oh, Mr. Ellis, go ahead.
Again, I'll just say that with all the things that I brought up and the information that I've gathered on this procurement, I won't be supporting this. This has a lot of dirt on it, at least in my eyes, and it needs to go back to the beginning, so I won't be supporting this motion to approve. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll say this. Unfortunately, this is not the first time council's been placed in a similar predicament. And normally, I think a lot of the angst can be traced back to our unhappiness around what we think has been inadequate program management. And so, and that has a big ripple effect as we're seeing here. And so I wouldn't mind at all if the committee moving forward, look more deeply into this, standards and expectations around program and project oversight. Motion's been made and seconded. I don't see any speakers, so let's queue it up. Let's queue up the vote. The vote is open. Councilmember Boone, how do you vote?
Yay.
The vote is closed. I find the vote is 5 ayes, 1 nay, 1 abstention. Motion carries. Next item.
Item number 5, 21R3262, a resolution by City Utilities Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee to execute an agreement for RFPS 1200185 geotechnical testing and investigation services with United Consulting Group Ltd. on behalf of the Department of Watershed Management in an amount not to exceed $2 million and 0 cents. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund department, organization, and account numbers listed, and for other purposes.
All right, and the iPro is required for this paper, correct?
That is correct.
And has the iPro been completed, or is it underway?
The iPro is in progress. It's not ready yet.
Is Ms. Noble on the line to give us a little bit of detail?
She was on earlier. Let's see if we can unmute her if she's still on.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, so the iPro for this matter has been initiated and it's underway, correct? Any sense of when it will be?
No, we have completed the iPro. I thought we sent it to be attached to this legislation. If Jared can check, we can send it again, but the iPro is complete.
Go ahead. I approved an iPro for this piece of legislation.
Well, Ms. Noble, could you let us know what your findings were?
Yes, we had one finding about the completeness of the contract package. The Chief Procurement Officer had not approved the conflict of interest forms, and that has been corrected.
You mean that was merely an oversight?
Yes. It was, he corrected it before we sent the form.
It was not an unwillingness sign off on it. It was an oversight.
Let me double check with my team and make sure, but I agree with that.
Okay. Other questions or comments? What's your comfort level, colleagues?
Mr. Shook, Councilmember Shook.
Yes. Go ahead.
I would just guess I'll make a motion to move forward with no recommendation on the condition that we receive the IPRO.
We may actually have received it, but kind of not dug it out of the inbox yet. Questions or colleagues? You read our questions. We are about to enter into our Easter recess, and so, the full council doesn't meet until April 19th. So there's plenty of time. I'm going to go ahead and, because of that, I'll go ahead and second that motion. Well, now I'm getting a message that according to staff's latest email that the iPro had not been completed. So do we have any more insight into that?
This is Amanda. Am I still unmuted?
Yeah.
I apologize. Yeah, I checked with staff. I got my wires crossed and was talking about a different report. We are completing the IPRO report for this solicitation. We just got it last week. The solicitation apparently been underway for a while, and the need for the IPRO report had slipped through the cracks. So I know the team is working to complete it.
Okay. Who here with any of the departments is able to speak as to the how time sensitive this is?
Hey, good morning, Councilmember Shook. This is Nikita Browning, Commissioner for Watersheds. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we also thought that the IPRO report was, pending review, so we hadn't gotten a copy of it. So this is one of our annual contracts that will provide support to the department. We retain vendors to support with a variety of geotechnical testing investigations regarding our menu of work here in the department. And so looking to retain vendors to provide those services that are needed.
Mr. Hillis?
My question would be to Ms. Noble, given this hasn't been completed, do you, without putting pressure on your investigators, will this be completed by the council meeting on the 19th?
I would expect it to be completed by then.
Okay, well, my colleagues are still comfortable with moving this forward with no recommendation on the condition we receive that IPRO report. We can move forward with that unless others need to be held.
I'm a little squeamish doing that. I think we're setting a precedent. Maybe I'm unaware of other committees taking such a step. If it was a simple matter of digging the already completed and clean one out of an inbox, I would leave my second where it is. But under the circumstances, I'm going to rescind my second and just let somebody else do that.
I'll withdraw my motion as well, and I'll make a different motion to hold.
Substitute. Okay. Motion is now to hold, and I'm going to second that. Let's have discussion on the motion to hold this so that the iPro investigation can run its proper course. I am not seeing speakers lined up. So let's go ahead and open the vote on the motion to hold.
The vote is open. Councilmember Boone, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Winslow?
In favor.
Have all members voted? One moment. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, it's unanimous.
Thank you. Next item.
Item number 6, 21R3263, a resolution by City Utilities Committee authorizing the mayor to enter into a memorandum of understanding and contract item agreement with the State of Georgia Department of Transportation on behalf of the Department of Watershed Management to lower and/or adjust water valve boxes and other water-related facilities in conjunction with the State of Georgia Department of Transportation. Project number M00595989. State Route 92 from CS 4003 Bay Street to SR 154 Cascade Palmetto Highway in Fulton County, Georgia, in an amount not to exceed $333,266.40. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the department organization and account numbers listed and for other purposes.
Thank you. Who's presenting?
I think we should have Rob Vaccaro on the line.
Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, Councilmember Shook and other council members. This is Rob Vaccaro, Department of Watershed Management. The purpose of this legislation is to request the mayor to enter into a memorandum of agreement with Georgia Department of Transportation and to provide an amount not to exceed $333,266.40 for the purpose of adjusting water utilities that are in conflict with a GDOT milling and resurfacing project. This project is located in Fulton County along State Route 92 from Bay Street to Cascade Palmetto Highway. Watershed Management has 139 water valves that conflict with the GDOT project. Watershed Management scope of work involves lowering water valves prior to milling and uncovering and raising to grade said utilities after resurfacing is complete. Therefore, this legislation is requesting the required construction services funding to perform the required utility relocation work. There is a map in the legislative package. So if you have any questions, I'm available to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions or comments about this proposal? I will make a motion to adopt.
Second, Matskai.
All right, there's been a first and second. Any questions or comments? I am not seeing any, so let's open the vote.
The vote is open. Councilmember Boone, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Winslow, how do you vote?
In favor.
The vote is closed. It is 7 yeas and 0 nays.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, what other business do we have?
That concludes the legislative agenda.
Just like that, we're finished. Does anyone have any announcements? All right, I've already touched on our upcoming Easter recess. So if there's nothing else.
I wanted to thank you.
I wanted to thank you, Councilmember Schiff. You did an excellent job. The meeting ran so long, but you did an excellent job presiding. Thank you.
Thank you. Never let it be said I didn't do the least I could do. All right, if there's nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you.